How you guys doing? With this video, I want to show you guys how to change your shocks and your springs on your JK. Um, I have a 3.5 lift, 3.5 lift on my JK. It's a rough country lift. I've had it for about 3 years, 4 years, and you can see that it's starting to sag on the right side. Um, Before I do this, I already measured all four sides to see where I'm at and how much of a lift I'm gonna get by changing the shocks and the springs. But this is a common problem that happens. Stuff wears down. Rough country, the rough country lift is great. It works perfect, but the springs and the shocks worn out. So I'm gonna show you guys how to change the springs and the shocks. Um, First thing you want to do is you want to get a measurement of how high you're sitting. That way you can see where you're at afterwards. See if you gained anything or you lost anything. You can really measure it wherever you want on all four tires, but the points that I chose to get a good measurement from, because if you measure here in front of the tire, it's hard to get a good measurement from the ground to the fender. So where I measure was right here to this corner, to this point on both of the rear sides, and then in the front side I measured to this corner. So that's really what I did to get all my four measurements. Wrote them down so that I won't forget. First thing you want to do is choose which side you want to work on, whether it's the front or the rear. Jack it up and take the tires off of it so you can get to the pieces that you want to remove. All right, so just to give an update, what I did was I jacked the front of the truck up on my differential. You can put something underneath of it so you don't put too much pressure on it if you want to. I've done it a million times. I haven't had any issues. So like I said, what I did was I jacked the truck up, removed the wheel. I disconnected my sway bar to make sure that it lets the axle travel as much as we need it to. I put a jack stand right there. I always put my tire underneath the truck just in case for some reason it falls down. It lands on the tire, and that'll help it stay off the ground, a little bit. So this is what I did. Right now I still have a lot of tension on my spring, so I wouldn't even be able to take it off as it is right there. What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect my shock to hopefully give me a little bit of more travel, and to see if maybe I don't need to go to the auto store and rent the spring compressors. Hopefully I don't have to. We shall see if I get enough travel to remove the spring without getting the spring compressors. But my next move is to go ahead and remove my shock so that it gives me a little bit more travel. Maybe I can flex the truck a little bit more and it lets me remove that spring from there. All right, so by removing the shock, I got enough travel to let my axle drop down, and I was able to pull the spring off without any issues. I never took the tire off the other side. That way the axle can stay up on that side and drop this one. So essentially I'm kind of flexing the truck right now, and that gave me enough travel to get this out. So I took everything out on this side. Now the next step is to put everything back. The springs that I got, being that I have all this add-ons on my truck, I got the Smittybilt XRC armor, I have the Smittybilt XRC front bumper, the rear bumper, all that. So I have extra weight on my truck. So what I did, even though I have the rough country 3.5 lift, I got the TerraFlex 4-inch springs in hopes that that gives me more height and more strength to hold up all that weight. So here's the springs that I got. This is one of the rear ones. The front ones are in here, but Terraflex is a good brand. It's a good brand of lifts. Those are the springs that I got, and the shocks that I got are the Fox IFP Performance 2.0 shocks. They're good shocks. I read reviews, and after reading a lot of reviews, you know, a lot of people say that they're good shocks, so I'm gonna try them out. I got a good deal on them in Jeep Beach, so that's why I bought them. And that's what I'm going with. I mean, you can do your homework, see what works better for you. With the people that I spoke to and the little research that I did, I found out that Terraflex is a good brand, and that's what I went with for my springs. And like I said, the shocks are Fox. So my next move is to go ahead and install everything back on just like you took it off. What I did was I removed my existing shock with a 14 up here. It was a 14 up here, and down here it was a 18 millimeter. Once I removed it, I did have to jack the truck up a little bit so that I could get the control arm out of the way and be able to slide the bolt out. And that's how I removed that. That's how you can remove yours. So the reason I'm changing these shocks is because right now I can grab them with my hand and I can spread them apart and push them back in with little to no force. So that tells me that these shocks are pretty much done. So yep, next move is to go ahead and install everything back on. All right, so I already installed the spring and the shock. You know, you just follow the same steps you took to remove it to put it back on. One thing that I do recommend is put everything in semi-snug, but don't tighten anything. Wait till you put your tires back on and you drop the vehicle with all the weight, so all the bushings and everything set where they need to sit. That way you don't get any squeak or anything like that. That I learned that the hard way whenever I installed my lift in my Jeep. I committed the mistake of when everything was jacked up to tighten everything, and when I put the tires back on and put everything back, my Jeep felt really loose. The steering wheel was loose, all that, and it was due to the fact that I tightened everything before I dropped the Jeep to the ground. So what I suggest you to do is, you know, put everything snug, but don't tighten anything. Put the wheels back on, drop the Jeep, then go ahead and tighten all your bolts so that all your bushings are sitting where they're gonna be resting in place, you know, from now on, and all that, and everything feels good on the Jeep. So pretty much what we did here is the same thing we're gonna do on that side. We're gonna put the tire back on this side, and then jack the truck up from that other side. This is where I put my jack stand. Maybe I forgot to show that. I put my jack stand right here on the frame, right behind this bar here. I put it right here on the frame, and every time I would drop the jack over here, the Jeep will sit here, and that's when I would get my flex on this side. So in order to put the shock back on, I had to play with my jack, you know, to lift and lower this to try to get the bolt in. It's really not hard. One thing you do got to be careful is with your brake lines. Make sure you don't put, because since you're flexing a lot, you're essentially, you know, pulling all your brake lines. Just make sure you don't tear anything. You know, make sure you're not putting too much tension on your brake lines. I don't want you to have any issues with that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go to the passenger side and repeat the same steps on the passenger side. All right, so this is the passenger side. We went ahead and did follow the same steps again. You know, go ahead and jack everything up. On this side, I jacked it up from the bottom of my control arm, as you can see. I put the jack stand in the same spot over there. in order to flex the Jeep. I left the tire on so that this side could drop down all the way. I was able to pull the springs out without any force. Once this is on the ground, the springs, all you got to do is just pull up on it a little bit, and it comes right off. No effort whatsoever. This time around, before I went ahead and dropped my jack, I removed my shock and all that, so that it would be easier. So remember, first thing you got to do is jack the truck up, remove the tire, take your shock out, then set your jack stand. Go ahead and drop everything, flex your this, you know, the side that you're working on, flex it all the way down, remove your spring, put the spring back out, and install the shock back in. Very simple. And that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and move to the rear. Started working on the rear. What I did was I jacked the truck up right there. This is what I've done so far. I jacked the truck up. You can start on whichever side you want to do. First thing I did after I jacked it up and removed the tire was I disconnected my sway bar so that whenever I flex this side down, whenever I take my jack off and this side flexes down, it's able to drop all the way and it's not hanging on the sway bar. So that's the first thing I did. Then by the way, this is a 19 millimeter in order to remove this. In order to remove the shock, it's an 18 millimeter. I went ahead and removed the shock. Then I got to unbolt the two bolts on the top, which they're 16 millimeters. That's what I'm doing next, in order to remove the whole shock. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and let the jack go down. Obviously, I gotta place a jack stand on the frame of the truck so that it doesn't drop all the way to the ground. And then I'll be able to remove the spring and install the new spring, and reverse the steps from there. All right, so we already did the other side, and we already did the other side, the other rear side. Removed everything like we needed to remove it. First thing we did was disconnect the sway bar, like I told you guys. We also disconnected the brake. That way you can get more travel on the axle arm. Then we removed the shock before bringing the axle down. We removed the shock. Once we did that, we brought the jack down and we placed the jack stand right here behind the control arm. Once we did that, we let the axle down and we were able to remove the old spring. Our new rear springs are a little longer than the old ones, so it's a little harder to put them in than the front ones were. On the front ones, we kind of just pressed up on the new springs and pushed them in, and they were able to go in pretty good. On the rear ones, we found out that they were getting caught. The rear one was getting caught on this little ball, right here. So in order to we couldn't physically grab them and push them up because it's just the tension is too big. So what we did was we used a crowbar right here. I placed it underneath the spring here, just like that, and I pressed up on the spring, trying to lift it above that little ball on the backside. And with the help of somebody else, one person lifts up on the crowbar and the other person pushes the spring, and it should fall in place. This is the way we install the other side. Once you do that, once you push the spring where it needs to be and you sit it where you want to sit it, you can jack the axle back up, install your shock, install the sway bar, disconnect, put everything back like you're supposed to. Remember not to put everything snug, but don't tighten it up yet. Once you put your tires back and you set your Jeep down and all the bushings go, sit where they need to sit and all that stuff, then you get underneath your Jeep. You should have way more than enough space and tighten everything up like you're supposed to. All right, so we put everything back like we were supposed to. Tires are back on. Pretty much from the measurements that I took before we started, on the side that it was sagging on, which was my passenger side, I gained 2 inches, and on the driver's side I gained an inch. So now my whole truck is sitting level at 23 inches on those points that I measure. Kind of hard to tell right now because it's dark, but it's sitting a lot more even than it was before than I started. So everything's put back, everything is where it needs to be. My next step is to go ahead and tighten everything up like you're supposed to do, and then that's it, we're done. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten everything up, and we're good to go for a test ride and see how the new essentially how the new suspension feels. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and it helps you out in changing your springs or your shocks or whatever it is that you're doing. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, share them, drop me some comments, and I appreciate everything. Thank you.